We spend much of our time, much of our lives at our job in the workplace. And it's a formative experience where we really learn invaluable skills and identify our abilities and our talents. And when we review past jobs that we've had, we can look back at some of them and go, yeah, that was a great job. I had a great mentor or great coworkers. And then other jobs we look back at and go, wow, that was traumatic. I'm so glad I made it out of that workplace. And I was reflecting back on some of the jobs that I've had, and one of my most fond memories was one of my first jobs at a fast food restaurant. And I was loving it because it was fast paced and I'm a workhorse, and it was just a good fit for me. And I had a supervisor that really took me under his wing and saw my abilities and gave me opportunities and promoted me into management very early at 16. And I got to be a trainer for new staff, and I got to host the children's birthday parties, and I just loved it. And yeah, I had to spray off vomit from the balls in the ball pit at Playland at times, or clean the fry vats, and I'd have oil saturated hair that would take several washings to smell good again. But overall, it was such a positive experience, and it was humble. Many of the coworkers, we made minimum wage and had a second job, and we were just happy to have a job, and we were surviving and making the best of maybe what would be considered a crummy work environment, but it was a supportive environment and dynamic. And it wasn't until I advanced in my career that I would really be exposed to unethical behavior or corruption in the workplace. So I treasure the simplicity, the humbleness of that fast food job experience. And as a targeted individual, more often than not, attacks on our livelihood are a huge and expected part of gang stalking, because what better way to destabilize a victim than to damage their ability to meet their basic needs, to provide for themselves and their resources. Once you lose your job or are forced out of a job and have to leave for your own safety, everything else kind of falls apart in following. Your ability to provide yourself housing and pay your bills and have the things that you need, and certainly your ability to be able to get an attorney to help you in this situation, all become compromised once the targeters have affected the workplace. And as a targeted individual, we don't immediately recognize, oh my goodness, I'm being targeted, I'm being gang stalked. We first see shifts in people's behavior and weird happenings, but we're often the last to know what's going on. A larger community, a workplace, a family group, a church group, everyone will know that we're being targeted and what's being said about us and why we're being attacked, but us as the targeted individual. We're left in the dark to piece together the puzzle, figure out what's going on. And sadly, there's just a lack of conscious and morals to come forward to the victim and say, hey, this is what's being said about you. This is what's going on behind the scenes. They're trying to set you up for a crime. Nobody will do the right thing and come to the victim. And it's such a psychologically abusive tactic of a community to do to one of their own in a targeting attack. But some of the signs that are first recognizable in the workplace, I'm going to go over today, that help to identify that targeting infiltration has made its way into the workplace. And it will look very similar to just regular workplace bullying, but the only difference is that bullying was influenced by outside sources and then brought into the workplace, where now you have new flying monkeys abusing the targeted individual. And one of the first signs that this is happening is exclusion. So suddenly the targeted employee, will no longer be on shared calendars. They'll be excluded from staff meetings or group emails to staff. They'll be ostracized and excluded from knowledge and even pertinent information to do their job. Next, there might be a shift in the way management handles them. There could be an increase of micromanagement. So a targeted employee may have been praised for their work quality and their performance. And now suddenly management is taking an unusual level of interest in monitoring and wanting to know about work activity, or giving the employee projects without any instruction or training, almost setting that employee up for failure. Or on the flip end, management could suddenly start ignoring the targeted employee. So where there was a warm, friendly relationship before, now management suddenly icy and says hello to all the other employees, but not the targeted employee. Or everyone else is getting a year-end bonus except for the targeted employee, and there's no justification or change in work quality that would explain it. There could be an increase of closed door meetings where there weren't before. Suddenly now management and staff is having all these closed door meetings, and you don't know what's going on. You just know there's a lot of chatter that you're excluded from. That's a good indicator that something's going on. And this was a saving grace for me because, unbeknownst to my manager, I could hear the conversations behind the closed door and actually heard dialogue of the conspiracy to set me up to try to frame me for a crime at my job. So I was able to protect myself, fortunately, by hearing that, whereas I would have just stayed in a hostile work environment and kept working to meet my needs and have potentially walked into the trap that they were setting for me. Contacting the boss or coworkers. This is where the flying monkeys will contact your job out of concern, and concern is the key word, the key manipulative word of gang stalkers. I just want to let you know that I think your employee might be on drugs or involved in nefarious activity. You should keep an eye on them. And they'll reach out to coworkers on LinkedIn or through social media. Hey, I just noticed you work where so-and-so works. You should be aware of this. And they'll try to provide seeds of doubt and skepticism and fear amongst coworkers in that workplace. So now you have coworkers operating as flying monkeys, monitoring you, reporting back, communicating, keeping an eye on, and that creates quite a hostile work environment. And this is really dangerous when they get a private investigator or have made false police reports, and now law enforcement is investigating and contacting the boss or coworkers questioning about the employee. Because even if that investigation leads to nothing and the employee is innocent, that job is forever ruined. That employee will be forever stigmatized and treated poorly, and it's ruined. Just like if there's an investigation in the community members will never accept that targeted individual the same ever again once there's been an investigation. And that's the damage that's so irreparable with false police reports. The only way to somewhat cause reparation in that situation is for there to actually be charges and prosecution against those who have obstructed justice and made those false police reports that have permanently caused harm to the victim's livelihood. There could be complaints from flying monkeys or paid actors. Suddenly someone's calling and saying, yeah, I had a bad customer service experience with so-and-so, where there was never any interaction. You've never had complaints before, and creating scenarios that, again, make the targeted individual look a certain way or paint them in a certain light that's untrue for the purpose of trying to get them fired or driven out of their job. Hacking is a guaranteed part of a lot of our gang stalking stories, and they will hack into work equipment or our personal laptop that we perform our work on and try to delete our work product or alter our work product, affect the quality of it, infiltrate our communications with coworkers, and send false dialogue as if us amongst coworkers to try and create issues in the workplace, just like they do in hacking in other settings of our lives. Circulating images and gossip. So the targeters will take that smear campaign and infiltrate it into the workplace. So now that same gossip, the same lies, that heinous slander is circulating amongst coworkers. Yeah, they're a drug addict. Yeah, they're, engaging in all this nefarious activity. You can't trust them. They're this and they're that. And now, where you had a respectable reputation and positive relations with your coworkers, suddenly you're being shunned. No one will talk to you. You're being isolated at the job, and they're all speaking these same lies about you in the workplace. Or the targeters will send images, nude images, AI created images, fabricated images of the employee as if they're on substances or participating in activities that aren't real or valid, to humiliate, to shame, and to further damage the victim. And sadly, these will be circulated amongst managements, and no one will come to the employee and fact check and let them know, hey, we've received this image. Are you aware that this is being circulated? Unfortunately, again, no one comes to the targeted employee and notifies them about what's going on so that they can protect themselves or even defend themselves. And sadly, some targeted individuals have shared stories about hidden cameras, where they've had hidden cameras placed above their workstation or even in the employee bathroom. And then that footage is used to circulate and humiliate and shame the employee. Some have even shared horror stories where sexual footage that they didn't even know was taken, non-consensual recordings, were sent to the job, and then the job circulated it amongst everyone in HR and exploited the victim, further violating them at their job. And of course, once that happens, you'll never be seen or treated the same, and it stagnates your career. It's miserable to stay in that environment, and a targeted individual is really in a tight spot because they could leave that job and go to another job, but that new job is going to want to speak to their past employer to do a reference check. And now that past employer, who's a flying monkey, will know where they're potentially working, will know where they've relocated to, and it places the targeted individual in danger. If they've left a community for safety, that past boss is going to report back to the other gang stalkers where the victim now is, where they're working, and then that new job will be infiltrated and they'll be, terrorized at the new job. And so it's really unfortunate because the stagnation in one's profession, in their career, is so ruthlessly affected by false claims, slander, the smear campaign, the contacting of the job. It's so inappropriate to contact somebody's place of employment. They're not doing it for the employer. And any employer that thinks that somebody who's calling and speaking ill of one of their employees is doing it for the good of the company needs to wake up. But I may have missed some of the things that you've experienced in your workplace as a targeted individual. So feel free to leave in the comments anything that you've experienced that I didn't include, because I think maybe in hope that somebody in HR will view this video or see the comments and learn a little bit so that they can be skeptical the next time a call of concern comes in or a rumor is spread about an employee in the workplace, that it's pretty important to fact check and to verify. And a workplace shouldn't be a place of danger and hostility, especially when we work so hard to build our skill set and advance and progress in our career. To have all of that just ripped to shreds and torn down because of the cruelty of others who are discriminating or just don't like you or envious of you or just want to hurt you or make you look unstable by getting you forced out of your job so that they can have influence in the court system to steal from you or take ownership of things. It's just so nefarious and unfair to an employee.